So in your opinion, have the Wall Street bets folks done anything that can be qualified as illegal, like truly illegal? Because even if hedge funds have been doing the same thing and getting away for it forever, it doesn't mean that it's not illegal. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you're not allowed to form pools and manipulate stocks. That is against the rules. I mean, you're laughing justifiably so, because I mean we've had that for decades. The problem has not been that the rules are there, but nobody's really enforced them.
Exactly.
But there's been loads of rules against fraud as well, and how many people got prosecuted for that in 2008? So
Zero.
I mean, it's not a problem of the fact that we don't have a regulatory framework. It's the fact that, I mean, to some extent we've eviscerated large parts of the framework, but the other problem is that even what's left on the books isn't being enforced anymore.
Right. So now let me say this, then. If they choose to enforce these laws that they have not enforced on hedge funds for decades now,
right,
not enforced on the billionaire class, if they choose to enforce these laws on these folks, these Reddit folks now, I think we're going to see a lot of civil unrest, because this is absolutely not fair.
I agree, and what makes it even more troubling and worrisome is the fact that it's really a form of generational warfare, because these guys that are the hedge funds, the guys who run Wall Street, indeed the people who run Washington right now, they're boomers, it's a gerontocracy. These guys who are the Reddit crowd, that's largely millennials,
right, Generation
Zers. So there is an interesting dynamic there, and then of course that all can be amplified by social media. So it's very, very, if we do ultimately get a stock market bust, you're talking about a generation of younger people that have really suffered through one financial setback after another, 2008, COVID, and if there's a stock market collapse on top of that, then yeah, I agree with you. I said to someone earlier that I thought they would make the protests we had last summer seem like a Disney movie by comparison.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that's right.
And they would be right to do that, because it's
I mean, the interesting thing is, does that lead to the conditions where you ultimately get a President Ocasio-Cortez? I mean, who knows? I mean, that's an interesting thought too.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so here you have an example of a group of folks taking down a hedge fund guy, one hedge fund guy. Over here, we have Wall Street banksters that have taken down an entire system that a lot of Americans paid for personally, whether it was through losing their homes or whatever else. So I think the dichotomy between these two things is huge. And if they choose to apply the rules on these guys while ignoring them for years on these guys, it's going to get ugly.
No, I agree. Look, they also went after Bernie Madoff, but he stole from rich people.
Right.
So I mean, it often starts that way. But as I said, if this activity, I mean, it did lead to some troubling declines in the markets. But if this activity ultimately, blows the speculative bubble apart, then everyone is going to be affected by it, and then there will be a reckoning at some point.
There will be a reckoning.
I don't think that there will be a repeat of what you had in 2008, where the whole creditor class and the 1%ers basically got paid out 100 cents on the dollar. I think it's going to be a very, very different situation.
We're going to see guillotines
with COVID and everything else. So yeah.
I'm talking about my $600 went into buying a guillotine. That's where we're at. So let me ask you this. Were they using any option trading when they did this, or was it just your standard short squeeze that they engaged in?
No, it's possible that they did both. I mean, look, you've got all these instruments have now been democratized, which I don't think is a good thing, because
let's talk about that for a second. Do you think it's a bad thing because a lot of people don't understand the intricacies of options trading?
Yes.
Or they don't understand the risk involved?
Both.
I
mean, it's like kids playing with Semtex. It's just you can say, well, bombs are, everyone should be allowed to use them. I mean, they're out there for everyone. So I mean, but no, I think there is a certain degree of training and expertise that comes into it. You don't let a 5-year-old do heart surgery. So I do think you do that's a legitimate criticism that's been made, and I think that's one of the areas where the so-called democratization of finance has been a bad thing.
Well, it almost seems like it could be sort of classified as a form of predatory lending, especially if they're trading on margin accounts too.
Not as a form, it is predatory lending. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Because it is complicated if you don't know what you're doing. And it is risky. I mean, if you're short selling, there's no cap on your loss. You have to cover that position at some point.
Yes, and as someone who has been at the, I was a portfolio manager, some years ago, and I've been at the receiving ends of one of those short squeezes.
Okay.
So it can be painful. So you got to be on your toes, but you also got to realize that you are exposed to potentially unlimited liability, and that's not a comfortable position for any person who's running money to be in.
Right. All right. I want to kind of change course for a second and talk about some of the tactics that hedge funds do use that these guys would not be able to use. Like quant trading is become sort of just garden variety trading at this point, I would say, on Wall Street. And these are when mathematicians create modeling where they're basically making money on the slight differences between trades, and they're doing it based on timing, right? So again, that would take money that these guys don't have to build out a computer system. And I think they even had arguments at one point where they wanted to get their server farms as close to Wall Street as possible so they could save time on when those trades are getting into placed.
The high frequency of trading is part of it, and to me that has no social utility. I mean, the fact that you can get your trade done in 5 seconds rather than 2 minutes is a bit of a joke. But that's not the only part of it. I mean, as you say, there are people. You have these quants and mathematicians. These literally, in some cases, rocket scientists who've devised algorithms that they use to help track inefficiencies in the market. Renaissance Capital is one of them. Although interestingly enough, the people behind Renaissance Capital generally give money back to investors because they find that they can't scale that to too large a size, and so I think that suggests that there is a fundamental instability there, which would suggest that look, I think a lot of these derivatives ought to become a little bit more plain vanilla and less complex. They would be ultimately lead to a more stable system.
And you're not wrong about being rocket scientists. I actually interviewed a Goldman Sachs quant trader, and his degree was in physics from Yale.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad that that our leading there's talk always about how there's a skill shortage in the United States. We don't have enough STEM workers. Well, we do, but the problem is that they work on Wall Street. So it's a misallocation of our brain power.
Yeah, there was no way he was ever going to make the same amount of money working anywhere else, which is
that's right.
ridiculous.
So the incentives are heavily skewed in the wrong direction, and it's going to take a while to change that if we do it at all.
Right.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.